The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Well, good morning, everyone. It is December 30th, and I hope everyone is having a wonderful holiday season. Today, we are going to present two programs from our Moment of Truth conference. The first one is EMR, What the Animals Are Trying to Tell Us, with Dr. Rob Brown. And the second one is Life Next to a Cell Tower, with Cece Doucette, Scott McCullough, Rob Brown, and Stephanie Locriccio instead of Hal Spackman. I also wanted to mention that today is the last day to take action in our action alert that allows you to submit comments to the FCC docket for its new proposed rulemaking. If you have not already done that, today is the day to submit your comments and stop the federal cell tower takeover. I hope everyone enjoys these two segments, and all my best wishes for a happy and healthy 2026.
Okay, let's see, conflict of interest. I have no conflicts of interest. I'm basically speaking here to you in an effort to promote the safer use of wireless technology and also encourage competition for safety in the tech industry. As they mentioned, I work for the Environmental Health Trust and I encourage you to visit our site, ehtrust.org. We have a lot of helpful information, and I hope you find it useful. So the emphasis on today's talk is on cell towers, and you've no doubt seen them in your communities. They're absolutely everywhere. They started being built during COVID, I think, or maybe a little bit beforehand. But we have masts, cell phone masts. We have the towers that are emitting 5G frequency, the small cells. And you may walk by them and think that they're not doing anything, but if you have a detector, you'll pick up that they're emitting radiation. And in this video, I'm using a detector that picks up the high band frequency of the 5G network. I'm across the street on the stoop of a house across one of these cells, and I'm getting maximum intensity values of over 10,000 microwatts per meter squared, which is very significant. Before we can really understand why this is damaging our health, we need to understand that we are electromagnetic beings, and we have evolved on Earth with cyclical patterns of light and darkness. And because of that, we've got all this physiology that is entrained to the Earth's rotation. I want to bring your attention to the one on the bottom, melanin production. That's important because what melanin is, it's a chromophore, it's a chemical in our skin, and it actually absorbs light frequencies, diffuses that energy, and then we emit that extra energy out into the environment as infrared radiation. So we are biologically protected from the deeper penetrations of light energy coming from the sun. We're talking about electromagnetic radiation, and the electromagnetic spectrum is a continuum of radiation representing different frequencies from 1 cycle per second, or 1 hertz, all the way up to gamma radiation. And the sun is exposing us to a certain bandwidth, including the visible light spectrum, which represents the vertically oriented rainbow here, as well as infrared radiation and the UVA and some UVB radiation. Everything to the right of the sun is considered ionizing radiation, and that we know is dangerous. It has enough energy it has enough energy to knock an electron out of an atom's orbit, depending on the binding affinity that electron has for its atom. To the left of the sun, we have non-ionizing radiation, which doesn't have that much energy, but it does have biological effects. Our technology is using this bandwidth in the megahertz and gigahertz frequencies. And the problem is we're not turning it off. The sun sets, but our technology stays on. And it's almost as if we're living in a world now with two suns. One sun's emitting lower frequencies, but it never sets. So what is that doing to our communities? We're going to find out. These antennas are popping up, as I mentioned, everywhere. Typically, they look like a triangle, and it's because each of the antennas are oriented at 120 degrees off axis to one another, so they can provide circumferential coverage. They're oriented towards the Earth at some distance so that the user can get the frequency. And these are emitting pulsations of radiation. It's not a steady stream of radiation. It's an erratic pulsation. They call it electromagnetic radiation because it's actually two intersecting waves. One is an electric field and one's a magnetic field. Now, I did a study when they started installing these back in 2020, and I found that the communities that had the new 5G, 4G LTE networks were exposing their population to between 10 and 100 times the amount of radiation on their main streets than the older networks. That was one of the things that got me totally panicked about this whole situation and got me to write a book, which I'll talk about later. So what is this radiation doing to our wildlife and the trees? Well, trees can't move. So if they're stationary and they're in a line of sight to one of these antennas, they're going to experience something called crown death. You're more than likely seeing this in your communities. It can take years. This is an example of a tree that was a certain distance from this antenna that was placed on a building top, and you can see that over the years, a larger and larger portion of the tree has died. How is this happening? It's a process that is initiated by the depolarization of the cell membranes. So the radiation penetrates into the organism, whether it's a plant or an animal. It causes the membranes to depolarize. And what happens is the ion channels in the cell membrane can open up. And one of them in particular is the voltage-gated calcium channels. When that opens up, calcium can influx into the cell and cause an imbalance in the cell's interior. That can result in something called the production of reactive oxygen species. They're oxygen-containing molecules that are unstable. They're looking for an extra pair of electrons. And in a normal state, your cell has an antioxidant called glutathione. It's the master antioxidant. And so glutathione generously donates its electrons to the reactive oxygen species, and you get balance back in the cell. But if you have continual exposure to a toxin over and over and over, minute after minute, hour after hour, day after day, week after week, your glutathione will become depleted. And then what happens is these reactive oxygen species start looking elsewhere for their electrons. If they take electrons from lipids in the cell membrane, those lipids can become peroxidized, and they become deformed, and it compromises the integrity of the cell membrane. If the electrons come from proteins or enzymes made of proteins, those proteins can become denatured. I will point out that we have a lot of diseases now in our society, such as ALS, Lewy body dementia, Parkinson's, et cetera. They're all caused by abnormal protein aggregates. Protein aggregation is a sequela of protein denaturation. If the electrons are taken from DNA, we can end up with mutagenesis and carcinogenesis. And if the electrons are taken from mitochondria, we can end up with mitochondrial dysfunction. How do we know if DNA is damaged? Well, there's a study called gel electrophoresis, and this is an example. And what you're doing is you're labeling the DNA with a fluorescein dye, and you're putting on a gel under a current. And if the DNA is intact, it'll all kind of stay together and result in a ball of fluorescence. But if the DNA becomes fragmented, those fragments of DNA are smaller, they'll travel farther on the gel than the intact DNA. And that's what you're seeing in the middle and the right-sided images. Now, the middle image was obtained when they exposed the DNA to ionizing radiation, gamma radiation, to the equivalent of, I think it's 1,600 chest x-rays, so a lot of radiation. We would expect that. But what we wouldn't expect is that when we exposed the DNA to a cell phone for 24 hours, well within the FCC limits, it also fragmented. Now, that's an in vitro study, but we've also seen that studies have come out showing that people who live within the vicinity of a cell tower, in this study it was within 80 meters of a cell tower, they experienced damage to the DNA in the peripheral blood leukocytes, which is a type of white blood cell, very important for immune system. So we're impacting our immune system. Now, the National Toxicology Program was given $25 million. It was a 10-year study, and they found that there was an increased risk in the animals that were exposed to the cell phone radiation. They developed brain tumors in the form of gliomas. I'm sure we've all heard of people now who are developing glioblastoma. It's the most aggressive form of brain cancer. Unfortunately, we're seeing it way too common now. These animals also developed schwannomas in their hearts. They had DNA damage, and they showed they had lower body weight in their offspring. The conclusions of the NTP study was that the International Agency for Research on Cancer was right in that cell phone radiation is possibly carcinogenic. But I don't want you to focus only on carcinogenicity. There's also neurological and behavioral effects. So they've done rodent studies, and they've shown that the animals become anxious and depressed when put in these radiation fields. And it reminds me of what we're seeing with our children. And we're all talking about The Anxious Generation, that book by Jonathan Haidt, and how he's correlating screen time and social media to these mood disorders in our children. And my suspicion is that it's not just the screen time and the social media, but it's actually the carrier signal. It's the RF that's being emitted by their devices. And I wonder if they were using hardwired devices, would they still be suffering from this anxiety? I don't think so. I really don't. Our children are also experiencing memory damage, and that has also been shown to occur in the animals when they're exposed to the RF radiation. And we've put cell towers on our schools and on our school playgrounds, and there's been studies that have shown that the students who are exposed to these cell towers are experiencing defects in their spatial memory, a delayed fine and gross motor skills, and also a decreased attention span, exactly the opposite of what you want in your student population. The students are not the only things that are getting confused, so I want you to see this quick video that was put out in CNN. Can we turn the volume up?
Radiation from mobile phones could be part of the problem. Researchers fitted mobile phones to a hive and powered them up for 2 15-minute periods each day. After 3 months, they found the bees stopped producing honey, egg production by the queen bee halved, and the size of the hive dramatically reduced. I spoke to an independent scientist in the UK about how the bees might have been affected. He pointed out that bees have a pigment called cryptochrome.
Animals, including insects, use cryptochrome for navigation. They use it to sense the direction of the Earth's magnetic field. And its ability to do this is compromised by the radiation from mobile phones and their base stations. So basically, bees do not find their way back to the hive.
Dr. Goldsworthy has written to the UK communications regulator Ofcom suggesting they change the phone frequencies so bees won't be confused.
That was very interesting, but bees are not the only animals that have cryptochromes. In fact, we have them too. They're on our retina. And we have a pathway that goes from our eye to the brain that tells our brain when the sun's out in the sky and when it's dark, and that's what tells our brain to produce melatonin. And what's interesting is that we're aware that our light at night, if you look at a blue screen, we're all aware that the blue light is affecting our melatonin production. But what you may not be realizing is that the sources of radiation that you have in your bedroom, perhaps it's a wireless speaker, your cell phone, a Wi-Fi router, it could also be coming from a source outside, like an outdoor antenna. It's affecting you while you're sleeping. And research has shown that circadian rhythms and melatonin production are also affected by RF radiation. In fact, it really doesn't take much. Very low and weak EMR fields have been associated with this impact. So an article recently came out in the New York Times, and the journalist said that radio frequency radiation doesn't even penetrate the skin. And I thought, how could anybody write something so ridiculous? But before I get into that, I just want to say what does happen is the radiation hits an interface, some of it is reflected back, but the rest of it's absorbed, and it goes deeper and deeper into the skin. And as it does, it becomes attenuated. And the point at which the radiation has lost 37% of its initial intensity, that's called the penetration depth. And so you'll hear some people say, oh, well, the penetration depth of this frequency is only 3 or 4 millimeters. But what they're telling you is that that's a point where you only have 63% of the radiation left, and to go even deeper. So the penetration is dependent on the frequency. The higher the frequency, the less penetration, and the lower the frequency, the greater penetration. That's for a given intensity. If you increase the intensity, you're going to have greater penetration. The penetration depth doesn't change, but the amount of radiation that gets deposited into deeper tissues does increase. Now, just as a radiologist, I have to say this. Of course, radio frequency radiation penetrates the skin. That's how we get MRIs. You're putting a patient in a magnetic field, and you hit them with radio frequency radiation that penetrates through your body, and the little protons in your body emit a sound, and it gets sent back to the computer, and it produces an image. And of course, we have microwaves also, which wouldn't work if radiation didn't penetrate past the skin. So anyway, this was a study done on bees. They sectioned the bees, and they showed that at a certain frequency, which is within the 5G bandwidth, there was maximum absorption of the animals with energy. And so that's another thing that might be causing damage to our bees. We can't section people. So how do we determine how much radiation is penetrating? We use modeling studies, and this is an example of a modeling study that was done in Brazil. This was a simulation of a child looking at a tablet, and you can see that the radiation penetrates into the face and then into the brain. Now, children are at particular risk for radiation, and it's for several reasons. One is they have greater water content, and so because of the physics and the electrical properties of the tissue, it allows deeper penetration of the radiation. Also, the nervous systems are not fully developed. They don't have as much myelin, so they're more vulnerable. And particularly important is that children are small. And so if you're considering depth of penetration and how deep is the radiation going, an adult who might have a few centimeters of body fat on their body might attenuate the radiation before it hits a vital structure, whereas a child, it would penetrate into their organs. Now, this was a study that I did earlier this year, and it's really, really important in my opinion. What I did was I looked at the impact of a cell phone on somebody's blood. Now, a lot of people have described rouleau formation on using dark field microscopy, but that was not considered convincing enough for the skeptics. But I had heard back when I was doing my training in the 90s that rouleau formation was something that you could see with ultrasound, and it was associated with disease states such as hypergammaglobulinemia and multiple myeloma and certain forms of cancer. So it was something that I hardly ever saw early on in my career. So what we did was we looked at the popliteal vein on the back of somebody's leg with an ultrasound transducer, and this obliquely oriented dark band is that vein. It's almost normal. I'm going to say for the purposes of this discussion, it is normal in that you're not seeing the blood. It doesn't mean that the vein is empty. The blood cells are just floating freely in the plasma, and they're too small for the sound beam to actually reflect and cause an echo. And that's why the vessel looks black. So we put the cell phone in the back of the knee for 5 minutes and then repeated the study. And look what happened to the blood. Now what you're looking at is aggregated blood. It's all stuck together in a slurry, and it's called rouleau formation. Now, this is significant. It's a pathologic hematologic state. It's not permanent. It does seem to improve after 60 or 90 minutes. But if you keep getting exposed over and over again, you are not in a healthy way. There's the risk of stroke. There's a risk of heart attack. I'm not sure what else there is. It might be that there's a risk of decreased metabolism. Perhaps low birth weight infants might be related to this because the oxygen delivery might be impaired. You need to have free-floating blood cells because you want to have maximum surface area for gas exchange. And if the blood cells are all stuck to each other, that's going to impact your gas exchange. So this is very important. And we've done more studies since this. We've looked at 40 people, and believe it or not, almost half the population is walking around with some degree of rouleau. So guys, I would not put a cell phone in your pocket. Women, do not put a cell phone in your bra, please, or in your pocket. I had this come across my desk, my work desk just a few weeks ago. I was reading a scrotal ultrasound, and you can see that this man, in the vein of his scrotum, he's in rouleau formation. So I didn't ask him if he was carrying his cell phone in his pocket, but I'm sure he was. But I just want to impress upon you that this is real. It's happening in the community, and it's not limited to the leg. There's a whole list of conditions that have been associated with radiofrequency radiation, and you would expect that because this is a non-selective agent. It's not like having a chemical in your body that's going to react with certain organs or compounds. It's non-selective, but unfortunately, regardless of the thousands and thousands of papers that have been written, the scientific community at large, the industry, and our regulators don't consider any of this to be valid because they're stuck in this paradigm that the only thing that non-ionizing radiation can do is cause heat. It's not true. So the bottom line is we're talking about energy, and it's affecting the health of the population. This is not scientific controversy. It's really a political and it's a financial situation. We're talking about $1 trillion industry that's been fabricated on a lie. And I don't know how we're going to get ourselves out of this, but we really need to figure out how we're going to do that. The FCC, as we know, has been a captured agency, and Children's Health Defense and the Environmental Health Trust successfully sued them with the help of Scott McCullough, who's going to be on stage here in just a few minutes. And they won, but the FCC still hasn't updated their standard limits, their standards. They're using standards from 1996, before we even had smartphones. We're trying to get the industry to compete on safety. You know, Volvo was the first car manufacturer to install seatbelts in their cars, and it wasn't a mandate. But of course, now every car has seatbelts. So we're looking for that industry partner to start creating safe technology and to try to turn the tide here. There's a lot you can do to take action, but the first thing I recommend is that you improve your personal use of this technology and create a place in your home where you can get away from it. And Peter Sullivan has a tent out in the lobby that's shielded with EMF repelling fabric. I suggest you go into it and make sure you remove any wearables or don't bring your cell phone in there. Just check it out and see how it feels. You may need one in your house, depending on where you live, if you're being exposed to outdoor antennas and you can't clear the energy from your bedroom. So thank you very much for your attention. If you found this talk interesting, I encourage you to check out Deborah Davis's book, The New Expanded Version of Disconnect. It's an excellent read. She's a fabulous author. And I have a book coming out in June that's going to be published by Children's Health Defense called Unplugged, and I hope you check it out if you want. Thank you.
I never asked to become an advocate for the wireless harms issue, but when I saw the people I loved sick and suffering, I knew I had to take action. I was a very confident 12-year-old. I grew up on a very quiet dead-end street in a very wonderful neighborhood. We really liked mountain biking, archery, building forts and fire pits. It was a pretty perfect childhood. In March of 2022, my neighbors and I, we were riding our bikes to the top of our street and we noticed the trees were being cleared and there was heavy machinery and large earth-moving vehicles. We were completely blindsided. We had no warning about what was happening. And when our city councilors and city officials were asked, they didn't know either. One day, my neighbor asked a worker what they were building, and he said it was a cell tower. He also said that it would be up and on before anyone could organize to stop it. Yes, we were worried about the lack of a butter notification, the lack of publicity around the tower, the deceptive location, deceptive address, and the failure to have any community say about a project of this size on residential land in a neighborhood called Shacktown. The tower had been constructed and it was up for a little while, and nobody felt anything. And then one day, my sister came downstairs saying she was dizzy, fuzzy, and headachy. And within the same week, other neighbors began reporting that they felt symptoms like insomnia, headaches, dizziness, AFib, palpitations, and tinnitus. And eventually, Mom called Verizon, and the person she spoke to confirmed that the very day my sister came downstairs with those symptoms, the tower had been fired up for the first time. We knew of 17 people with symptoms so profound that it was impacting their daily lives. My symptoms prevented me from attending online classes because of the dizziness, nausea, and headaches, and people were literally sleeping in their cars instead of their homes just to get away from the tower. By March, we were sleeping every night away from home, but we had to go back daily to shower and eat and school remotely. Well, my sister and I, along with our neighbors, had a tag sale and sold our toys to raise money to hire an attorney. We were told that the health impacts could not be taken into consideration, so our lawyer fought on permitting issues like the failure of notification. We petitioned our city council to have the tower re-permitted, this time with notice. And while we had the complete support of the city council, it didn't make a difference. So we petitioned our city council to ensure all cell tower notifications would go out by certified mail. We asked for them to be sent to everyone within a 1,640-foot radius, and ended up getting it passed so that everyone within 800 feet would be notified, which felt like a win. The biggest success we had was getting our Board of Health to investigate the cell tower sickness and hold forums with doctors, engineers, physicists, and subject matter experts, which led Pittsfield to be the first in the nation to issue a cease and desist against an on-air cell tower.
The Pittsfield Board of Health voted unanimously Wednesday to send a cease and desist order to Verizon if the company doesn't address concerns over the cell tower at the top of Alma Street.
Our court case is currently in the Supreme Judicial Court, and we are waiting to see if we will be able to go home.
In the meantime, it's hard for Gilardi and others impacted by the tower to think about all the time they've spent pushing for progress with no end in sight.
In our book, a win was a win. It didn't matter if it was small because it was a step in the right direction and it would have been better than what we had. The cease and desist ultimately didn't go anywhere, for us in our case. But in terms of setting a precedent that this can happen, it was huge. Like, I remember holding a forum and just everybody saying, this gives us so much hope. Because if you can do it, we can do it. And if your Board of Health can stand up and defend the health and safety of their constituents, then ours can too. Well, about a month or two into this issue, I heard my parents and neighbors speaking on Zoom at City Council and heard the frustration of our Shacktown community in consistently getting ignored by the people in power. And so one night, I asked if I could speak because I said if those in power are refusing to listen to the adults and who have been refusing to listen to us, maybe, just maybe they will listen to a child. And so at 12 years old, I was speaking at every city council, zoning board, and Board of Health meeting that I could. We would make posters about what was going on with the tower and how sick we were from it. We would post it on Facebook at Pittsfield South. And we would take these posters to city council and everywhere we could. And it started to go viral. And so after that, I wrote a story called Amelia's Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Cell Tower Days. And Patricia Burke published it, and it was translated into 5 languages and spread around the world. And people responded, and people would reach out to me saying, I've been injured by a cell tower too, I have a cell tower story too. And that grew into the creation of Global EHS Day. And every year for the past 3 years, I've had our mayor issue a global EHS Day proclamation and hosted, along with Cecilia Doucette of Massachusetts for Safe Technology, an annual global EHS Day forum called Voices of the Invisible Made Visible. From there, the advocacy grew into speaking on legislative efforts, like speaking with Dr. Kent Chamberlain in New Hampshire on setbacks that would protect everybody equally, or introducing bills here in Massachusetts like HD 1135, which is a registry of harm for those with EHS, along with an educational component for physicians, nurses, and public health workers. It's heartbreaking that over 2% of the population are affected, and that children have literally died by suicide over this issue. People have become jobless and homeless over this issue. Children are forced to be homeschooled over this issue. Clearly 12-year-old me was onto something when she said maybe they'll listen to a kid, because I think I have been able to do my small part in sharing the voices of the people who are sick and suffering, and for me that's just the most powerful and important thing that I can do. By educating about using technology safer by hardwiring and the use of Ethernet, we can reduce the amount of towers needed and increase safety in our homes. By supporting 704 No More, we can value health and safety as much as we value viewshed and aesthetic. We are not invisible, we are not alone, and we are not going away until we can go home.
Thank you, everybody, for being with us after lunch. We know this is the sleepiest time of day, so if you need to get up and shake it out, by all means do. We want to invite everybody to put their devices in full airplane mode for the remainder of this part of the project here. So this is the radio frequency radiation detection meter loaned to us by our friend Janet, who's with us today. And it measures these spiked pulses of microwave radiation. In our sleeping areas, the goal is to get to 10 microwatts or less. Right now in this room, with our exposures, we are at 5,000, 570,000. We measured on the other side of the building today, it was 660,000. We measured some earpods, and they were 25,000. So we want to give you the numbers, because once we know better, we can do better. I also want to give a shout out to Bobby Kennedy. I watched a video of his when I was early on this journey, and first it was like, what? A Kennedy knows about wireless? Come on. That was back in 2018. But I watched a video that said, he was paraphrasing Martin Luther King Jr. When we finally make important changes in our world, in our societies, it comes through 3 channels. 1, the public learns, fixes what they can, and then activates to help their communities. 2, it goes through the courts, and 3, public policy eventually catches up. And we have so many incredible inroads into all of that today. So my name is Cece Doucette. I'm the director of Massachusetts for Safe Technology, and I didn't know any of this. But good doobie parent, I revived my local education foundation when my kids were in school, and then I ran campaign after campaign to get what we were being told by industry that our kids needed for the 21st century classroom. We got wireless infrastructure, we got iPads, Chromebooks, smart boards, minis, and then a girlfriend of mine who's an electrical engineer pulled me aside and said, guess what? There's biological effects. And I'm a technical writer by trade, so I thought, is there any science? And you don't even need to look far, you just need to know to look. And as Dr. Brown told us, there are literally thousands of peer-reviewed studies all over the world showing the cancers, the infertility, the neurotoxicity, and nobody knows. So I do a free public education webinar every month, so that anybody in the English-speaking world can go on Zoom with me and learn the science, learn the medical recommendations, and what we can do, baby steps, just to get started. Protect your sleep above all else. Then I also partnered with Dr. Mikko Ahonen in Finland, and we have built a little online course called saferscreentime.org. We can help you train your company your schools, your municipality, your families and friends in about an hour online for about the cost of a movie ticket. So please go to saferscreentime.org, go to Massachusetts for Safe Technology, and of course go to Children's Health Defense, because with great thanks to Marian Eckenfels and the team that she and Mary have built, including our wonderful Stephanie, and of course lead litigator Scott, we have so much information to share with you to help you feel empowered. When my kids were little and something was going wrong and they were upset, I'd say, go over to the couch and scream into the pillow. Get it out of your body like the dogs and the birds do when you're upset, right? But then come back to the kitchen table and let's figure it out. So there's a lot that you and I can do on the personal level to protect ourselves. Go to the back of your router, go find your box of Ethernet cables and plug them back in. Then just get the adapters to your devices, and you can start controlling your exposures in your home environment. That we have control over. Unfortunately, there are other exposures that we do not have control over, and those cell towers that Rob was highlighting are one of the most important, because once a cell tower goes up, wow, good luck getting it down. So you need to know what's going on in your town, and you need to get informed, get to a comfort level. And then, Stephanie, you have been working in the advocacy space on this for quite some time. So why don't you share with us some of the dangers from the cell towers and what we see people doing to get going on that?
There are so many dangers. And you know, the thing about this that infuriates me the most, many of us started in the vaccine movement. I know that's where I came from. And you can choose ultimately what pierces your skin in most cases. The scary thing with these cell towers and this invisible exposure is there are many people, like you just saw in that short video from Amelia, who don't have a choice. You wake up and all of a sudden in your neighborhood, a couple of 100 feet or maybe 30 feet even from your home, there's a tower that's right there. And the impacts can be everything that you saw: sleeplessness, all different types of headaches, nausea, tinnitus. I mean, there's so many things that people are experiencing. And because the awareness around the health impacts coming from these exposures are not things that are known. You can see it. People walking around with the AirPods in their ear, they have their phone tucked into their bra, tucked into their pants. They don't understand that these devices were not created to be attached to your person at all times of the day and night. We were not meant to have microwave technology inside of our ears as we lift weights or run on the treadmill or all the things that you see people doing. So it becomes our responsibility to educate. And Cece does a beautiful job of this, you know, spending time anywhere she is, sharing with people ways that you can mitigate exposure. We have our resources online, Stop 5G Empowerment Consulting, where we actually are taking advocates through the steps that you can take to prevent this exposure, to prevent having a tower erected in your backyard or in your child's school or in the park where your kids are playing, or even in your church. You're seeing these incentives all over the place for people to have these towers put. I mean, I pass all the time, these small cell towers on buildings, apartment buildings, churches, schools. It's very, very scary. And like Cece said, once this happens, undoing it is a problem. I mean, you're talking about the effects of having your property values lowered, the fire risks that come along with that, the health impacts, the list goes on and on. So it's really important for each of us to really get educated on this important topic, because we're seeing it happen very quickly. The proliferation of wireless technology is moving fast, and it is our job, each and every one of us, to do our part to educate and to give people the tools and resources. And we've done a beautiful job at Children's Health Defense, partnering with different coalitions, different communities. We have a community out in Sitka, Alaska. House Backman, who was supposed to be here today and unfortunately could not, and I'm pinch hitting for him. He and the community that he's working with were able to successfully prevent a tower from being erected in their neighborhood. We had the same situation in Nevada where they were trying to put a tower in a school area, parks. So there are success stories. The thing is staying on the pulse of what's happening in your neighborhood. And The playbook is the same. You know, we've all been looking at the big industry playbook when it comes to pharma and food. With telecom, it's the same exact thing. We have to be vigilant in looking at what's going on. We need to be in our legislators' faces, talking to them about our concerns with having these towers in our neighborhoods, with protecting our children, protecting ourselves, because as you see, Amelia's story is not unique. I've interviewed personally so many people on CHD TV that have the same experience, and you're talking about over time. I remember that story. What was that kid's name that I interviewed that had the brain tumor?
Mason.
Oh my God.
Mason Ferrulo.
That story stays with me. His mother, the pain that his mother went through, watching her son deteriorate from just going to college, and his college dorm was literally a couple hundred feet away from a cell tower. So do your part, get educated. And I know for a lot of people, it's daunting getting into this new territory and jumping in. You have cellular technology and things around you all the time. The little things that you could do on a daily basis of just hardwiring, taking the time to get those apparatuses and hardwiring your stuff, putting your phone in airplane mode. Talk to your teenagers. I have gone over this with my son so many times. So many teenagers are sleeping with their phones tucked underneath their pillow as they transmit while they're sleeping. So it's little baby steps, and definitely checking our website often, going to Stop 5G and looking at the different empowerment consulting opportunities that are there. Our team is here for you. Do not have to do it alone. We have all the tools, resources, and information available to get you up to speed and to give you what you need to prevent this from happening in your backyard.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. And I misspoke. Mason Ferrulo was the little boy in the hospital bed in Amelia's video, and he did die from the many different tumors in his brain and his body from the cell tower that was erected at his school out in California. Stephanie was referring to Virginia Farver, whose son Rich was down in San Diego, where there was a military installation very nearby, and there were many cases of breast cancer. And in a particular room on campus, the kids who lived in that room all came down with these cancers. So it is happening. Children are especially vulnerable, as Rob mentioned. Their skulls are thinner. They are absorbing more water because they have, or more radiation because they have a higher water content. Their central nervous system is still developing. Their immune system is still developing, and this damages DNA. So it's quite a quandary for our public officials. I've had many conversations with our schools, and it was not easy, but after many, many presentations and conversations, we became the first public school district in the United States to even have a sign with baby step precautions. Turn these devices off when we're not using them. Don't just leave a whole laptop cart sitting there radiating. Turn everything off for starters. Turn the Wi-Fi on only when needed, and always place the mobile device a distance from the body. And if you join me for one of my free public education webinars, I give a walkthrough of the legal fine print that's been in our devices all along that none of us has ever read. It was that legal fine print that got my schools to take at least this precaution here. In the area of public policy, with great thanks to Rob's colleague, Dr. Kent Chamberlain at the Environmental Health Trust, we helped New Hampshire pass the first law in the country to investigate this issue, and they took a year and issued this groundbreaking commission report documenting the conflicts of interest with the wireless industry and our federal agencies, and making 15 recommendations for what we should be doing to protect our children, our pollinators, our planet, and migrating away from wireless for primary connectivity. So we need to get wireless out of our schools. We need to get our libraries and our public buildings and our public parks without wireless so we can get out and recreate in nature, which will build back our systems. So Scott McCullough, our friend here, is one of my greatest heroes. Scott actually testified with us on subsequent bills that we tried to get enacted to carry out the recommendations in this commission report. And this is available on my website at Massachusetts for Safe Technology on our state efforts page. We have 6 bills right now in Massachusetts to help with this issue. So if anybody wants to talk policy, I can give you some good starting places. But Scott came in and taught us what the industry playbook is. Now, I don't know if you guys know Scott very well, but he is from this fine state of Texas, and he was an assistant attorney general in the telecom field, so he knows the playbook inside and out, and you could not have a better representative for the EMR, electromagnetic radiation/wireless team, than we have with Scott and Miriam leading these legal efforts. So, Scott, would you share with us what happens when these industries come into our towns and say, here's an application, we would like to put a cell tower up. What does that even mean to our local municipal agents who pretty much know nothing about the telecom playbook?
Most of these facilities have to get a land use permit. It typically goes before a zoning board. And most of the time, there is required to be notice and an opportunity for the community to provide input. Although the FCC is trying to very much restrict what local jurisdictions can do in an ongoing proceeding, at present, there is still a lot of discretion that local jurisdictions have, except for one thing. Congress decided in 1996 that local jurisdictions were not going to be allowed to say no, and I'm not going to state the statutory language, I'm just going to tell you what it means. You can't say no to a tower because you think it's going to make people sick. Of course, that's the biggest concern, because we know it's going to make people sick. But there are still many other things that people can do, and there are many other legitimate concerns people may have. Some of you may not believe what we're trying to tell you about the health effects. But if you look at these, and you've seen the pictures in these videos, they're ugly. No one wants one of those right next to your house. You don't want to look out your bedroom window. Many folks have purchased a home so that they could look at the mountains or the ocean, and they don't want this ugly toilet brush, upside down toilet brush, right in between their front porch and the ocean or the mountain or whatever it is that they treasure and they paid all the money for their home for. And the statistics show that if you have a cell tower within a half a mile of your home, especially as it gets closer, your property value can go down by up to 20%. Nobody wants one in their backyard. Now, we all love our devices. Oh, by the way, I'm in airplane mode.
Thank you, thank you.
Okay. Everybody loves their devices. I use the technology too. We're not trying to take away your cell phone. I think Rob would agree, and those who are understanding the way that networks operate and the way that wireless technology works and all of that will tell you. You go to Europe, the standards there are maybe 100 times lower than they are in the United States. Their cell phones work. So while we can't go to, or at least the local jurisdiction can't say no because of health effects, there are still many things that can be done. The big thing that they can do is they can decide, no, actually, even if you really need a cell tower, don't put it here, put it down the street. Put it somewhere else. Make it shorter. Make it not so ugly somehow. So the location is one of the things where they have the most discretion over. And, our advocacy for the most part is, well, we kind of get that you need the technology, but you don't need so much of it. And can we keep it out of residential areas and not by schools? Put it in an industrial area. This is industrial infrastructure, after all. These are the sorts of arguments that you can make to a local jurisdiction. Now, we do not pretend that one of our driving motivations is the health effects, But it is important in any of these proceedings, and that's what they are. They are a kind of legal proceeding. To get involved as soon as you get wind that a permit request has been made. Typically, there's either mailed notice or a sign at the site. You find out about it, get a hold of the local authority, find the application, get the specifics, talk to stop5g.org. We have tons of resources. You can talk to us. We will consult with you on how to do the ground game. It's really important to make a record before the zoning authority. We have experts. We use some of Rob's colleagues many times to address the things that the local jurisdiction can still address. We talk about whether it's really needed. We talk about safety issues like, well, you want to put this 10 feet away from my property line and 30 feet from my house. We're talking about a 50-foot tower. I'm kind of scared it may fall on my house and crush my dog or me or my child. Can you move it somewhere else? These are legitimate things, but you've got to make a record. You have to show up, you have to sign up, you have to be effectively a party. Because they are supposed to make their decision based on substantial evidence in the record if they are going to deny. It's in the federal statute. Any denial must be based on substantial evidence. So it's your job to give them the evidence that they need to make an intelligent decision. You may not always be happy with that outcome, but I can guarantee you can move the needle just a little bit. Now look, I'm just a lawyer here. I'm a word merchant, okay? It's my job to kind of assemble stuff. What's really important is for the community to be involved. I can only do my thing if I have folks like you who are motivated to make change. And these local jurisdictions, they are the people that you see in the supermarket or in the grocery store. They're voters. They will pay attention to you. If enough of you show up and you convince them that you really mean what you say, and in the back of their head they think, gosh, if I upset these people, I may get unelected next time. They will pay attention to you. So get involved, get a hold of stop5g.org as soon as you get wind of one of these, get organized, stay motivated, and get communicative to your local authorities. Tell them what you think. Tell them what your local values are. Remind them of why you elected them to office, and you will have an effect, I guarantee you.
Thank you, Scott. Yeah. That was one of my hardest lessons learned is don't go it alone. One voice is very easily swept under the rug, but if you have a couple of people who are well informed, and then they get others just to show up at the meetings, to show solidarity. A lot of people are gun shy when it comes to getting up and talking at a public meeting. You only need a few people to be vocal, but you do need to get your friends and neighbors informed. And we're fortunate to have with us today Peter Sullivan, who is the executive producer of an award-winning film called Generation Zapped. And Generation Zapped came out in 2018. I think I have a copy of it in here somewhere. But it's also part of our streaming services in most of our libraries today. So get your friends together, do a potluck dinner, right? Sit down and have a movie, and then watch Generation Zapped together. It's one of the easiest ways to organize. And it's a great movie. There's some humor in it. It's not all dark. You know, we try to bring the light to everything that we do. But Generation Zapped is a really good way to get this conversation going. And we always do better breaking bread with loved ones and friends, right? So bring a dish, sit down, watch the film, and then contact stop5g.org because there's something called the shot clock. You want to explain that one, Scott?
Yes, under the federal statute and some federal communications rules, and oftentimes in state law, there is a specific period of time. Once the application is filed and accepted, there's only a short period of time for them to actually issue a decision. For example, if they want to modify a existing tower by putting new antennas on it, they've got 60 days under federal law. Under other circumstances, they've got 90 days. If it's a brand new cell tower that's not what we call a small cell, in other words, short, it's taller than 50 feet, it's 150 days. But trust me, in government, that's a moment. And a lot of jurisdictions have a very hard time actually doing everything they need to do under their local ordinance, give everybody the due process to which they are entitled. So we all have to work very hard. That's why I said, as soon as you learn of this, you got to bring us in so that we can start getting things important. The problem is that in many circumstances, if they do not decide by the end of the shot clock period, the application is deemed approved. So it's in everybody's interest to make sure that we help the local jurisdiction get the evidence it needs, get through the process, and make a decision by the end of the shot clock period.
So sometimes what the industry will do is they'll roll into town and say, oh, we've got a gap in coverage, so we need to put a cell tower here. And that may not even be true. Can you talk us through what the law says about the requirement that you have to allow them to connect? Is it all of this mobile technology that has to have capacity to connect?
Well, y'all know about agencies, and so you probably know that, especially with certain federal agencies, their view of the law isn't always what the law actually says. Big surprise. The statute here uses very specific words. They say a local jurisdiction, not only can they not regulate on the basis of environmental effects, but they also cannot deny a permit if it would prohibit or effectively prohibit the provisions of personal wireless service. Again, another magic word. But for those of you who just want this in plain English, we're talking about basic cell phone service and the voice portion. Most of the time when they want to put in a new, especially a small cell, it's not so that you can make a 911 call. It's not so that you can make a regular call. We always hear people going, why do they want to put it here? We've got great coverage. Well, actually, what it's all about from a business perspective, and by the way, we don't have time to talk about it, but I spent 40 years representing the industry before I realized in 2020 that everything I knew was wrong. What they are actually doing here is two things. One, they want to densify their infrastructure so that they can provide better data service. It's all about your cat videos. It's not about making phone calls. Well, the statute doesn't say cat videos. It says make phone calls. So a lot of times in local jurisdictions, we find out it's really about data service, and even more important, not even mobile data service, it's fixed wireless service to the home broadband internet in competition with the cable companies. Well, that's, in my view, is not protected by the statute. The FCC has disagreed, and one of the things that I think is going to be litigated now, especially since a couple of recent Supreme Court decisions, is whether the FCC's view or what many of us in the advocacy community, the way we look at the statute, which is true. I say it's for voice service. They say it's for everything. That's a long way of answering no. Now, one other thing that I want to point out before I'm wrong, because I'd be remiss if I didn't make the connection. You're going to have a panel, two panels coming up talking about the digital control grid. I just want to make sure everybody here understands another reason why they're trying to cover the earth with this stuff. Okay, those of you who are worried about like digital money, digital ID, passports, where do they live? In your cell phone. Okay, this infrastructure that we are talking about here, cell towers, they are the fence posts to the digital grid. Now, we're not really able to talk about that very much when we get to these local zoning cases. But when you are talking to your federal and state representatives, you need to make sure they understand that you're not just worried about the health effects, as bad as they are, that you also object to this push towards creation of this digital surveillance system I mean, I was involved in the development of 5G standards. I was involved in the development of 4G, LTE standards. And I can tell you what's going on inside that network. That network is ready to go right now to do all of the things that you're going to be hearing about in the next couple of sessions. And that's why they want to put cell towers every 750 feet all across the country.
Yeah. So, so 3G and 4G and prior to that, second and first generation technology, those antennas started, as Scott inferred, out in industrial parks 300 feet up in the air. When the industry started spinning up 5G, fifth generation technology, it is not a technology that stands unto itself. It still uses the backbone of those earlier generations that use longer wavelengths to carry our signal and data to get to your devices. Those longer wavelengths can go into a building and get to your devices. What was left are these tiny little millimeter waves, which, by the way, our militaries have been using for quite some time for crowd control, because they take that wide array of signals and they beamform it down into something to disperse a crowd. This is what 5G technology is. It's taking that beam on top of all the other pulsations that are going out in all directions and beamforming it down to your devices. So whatever is in between your device and the signal that's coming off of these 5G small cells, it's going to go right through everything. What the science is telling us, Rob, and maybe you can share a little bit about what you were saying about the navigational systems that the birds and the bees have. We have something in our own skin that helps us to navigate our world. Can you tell us a little bit about the effects there?
I was mentioning chromophores, and some people believe that we do have a navigational system that is being impacted by all this RF. I personally don't have a good sense of direction anymore. I used to be able to get anywhere. If I had been someplace before, I could get there again, no problem. And now I can't. So personally, I've experienced that, but I don't think the science is conclusive on that ability.
And we have like little antennas in the surface of our skin that will signal us if it's too hot, you better go cool down somewhere. If it's too cold, you better go bundle up or you're going to find yourself in trouble. So the industry will say, oh, 5G is fine, it barely penetrates the skin. Well, I'm sorry, but our skin is attached to every other organ in our body. So they come up with these messagings to minimize the harm, and they'll say, oh, let's all do 5G, super highways, smart cities, faster downloads. Well, I don't think it's so smart, and I don't think our cities need that. I think our children need a safe place to live. They need a safe home. They need a safe school, and it's up to us to learn. So we hope that you will join us at Massachusetts for Safe Technology, and we also hope that you'll look at safer screen time if you just want to do a quick online course to get to the bottom of it, and all the incredible resources at Children's Health Defense. So right now, Scott and others are working on other initiatives because the industry is pushing hard and fast to strip what local control we do have in our zoning bylaws if we've taken the time to get code in at the local level. Scott, can you tell us what the deal is up at the federal level right now?
Local communities are getting organized. Stop5G.org and others, CC and many others. There are several of us. There's about 4 or 5 lawyers that do this on a nationwide basis. I'm only one of them. We're actually beginning to win. The local jurisdictions are actually starting to pay attention. So the industry has run to the Federal Communications Commission. Y'all have probably heard the story about captive agencies. Well, if you ever read a book on a captive federal agency, you'll notice something. The Federal Communications Commission is always chapter 1. Okay, and that has been so for a very long time. So the industry is now going, ow, I'm losing all these cases, and and they're making me change what I thought was going to get rubber stamped, and it's costing more money than I want to spend, and they don't want it the color that I wanted. They wanted another color. So they're running to the Federal Communications Commission, which has now decided to rush out this new set of proposals that would pretty much strip local jurisdictions of all the discretion that they have. They would turn them into the rubber stamps that the industry wants them to be. Your local jurisdiction wouldn't be able to say no or listen to you anymore. They'd still get all the complaints, they'd catch all the heat, but truly there would be nothing that could be done. For a long time, we had to tell them, there's plenty you can do. You don't have all your hands tied. You only got one finger tied. Well, the commission is proposing to tie the rest of their hands. We have another initiative. It's called 704 No More. And what we are going to be doing is it's a two-front effort. First of all, we're going to bring some cases. We're going to be challenging the statute itself, saying, I'm sorry, that's not the way things are supposed to work. The Commerce Clause doesn't allow it. All the legal mumbo jumbo. But basically what we're going to be saying is, Congress, don't be taking away local jurisdictions. This is a local thing. Locals should be able to decide what infrastructure they have, where and on what terms and conditions. We're also mounting a very large effort to try to convince the commission to not do what it is proposing to do in its proposal that was released in September 30th. One of the good things about the shutdown is it hasn't been published in the Federal Register, so the comment period hadn't run. But we're getting ready when the time comes. We'll be submitting a broad set of comments, hopefully with the support of many other organizations. We've got a huge coalition of over 100 organizations in the 704 No More coalition. We're going to tell the commission, hell no, 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 you can't do this. The statute doesn't allow it, the Constitution doesn't allow it, and it's a really bad idea anyway. Now, do I think it's going to convince them? Probably not. Probably not. But we will make a record. Remember, I told you how important it is to make a record. Okay, well, we're going to make our record at the FCC, and when they do what I expect them to do, it's going to be terrible. Well, we'll have to go back to the D.C. Circuit, which was the court that handed us the win 4 years ago, and our story is going to be, well, you told them 4 years ago to look at health effects, to look at you gave them homework, look at these 6 issues in terms of the human exposure guidelines. They're refusing to do what you told them to do. Meanwhile, they're rushing out the infrastructure, claiming exclusive jurisdiction over exposures when they don't have it. So, court, make them stop doing all of this stuff until they do the homework you gave them. That's basically the game plan.
So I was so excited when the Environmental Health Trust, Children's Health Defense, and other parties across the country all joined into this lawsuit, as Scott said 4 years ago. And I'm like, yes, they won. Does that mean that, you know, they're going to protect our kids? Well, there's no cavalry coming, you guys. You're it. There is nobody coming today to protect your children. It's you and me and every other parent, grandparent, auntie, and uncle. We have to learn about this because today we can create a sleep sanctuary in our own spaces to give our bodies the time to heal and repair at night. That's our first step. Let's protect ourselves, but you've got to tap in, call your local town manager or your zoning board or your planning board and say, hey, where are we with cell towers? Where are we with 5G small cells? Are you guys getting any new applications? And what I discovered in my town, somebody in my town who is familiar with my work said, hey, there's something going on. There's going to be a planning board meeting. And so I looked over this application that came in, and there was a pad already set that has had a cell tower tucked a little bit into the woods, close to a neighborhood. But they had all these antennas up there already. And the industry came in with this new application saying, oh, it's all going on the same thing. We're just going to take a few down. We're going to put a few more up. No big deal. And I went to that meeting and I posed a question to the gentleman from industry. I said, are you introducing new technology? Are you introducing 5G without telling us? And yes, that's exactly what they were doing. So we have to ask the questions. With 5G, I mentioned those little millimeter waves. They are promising fast speeds and all this data down quick. But those little millimeter waves can't go very far. So as Scott indicated, their goal is to put a cell tower inside our neighborhood in our public access way, every 7 to 12 houses, right at bedroom height. And can I share with you what happened to a family out in Sacramento? These folks, they save their money, they move into their dream house. All of a sudden, the 2 little girls who share a bedroom got sick. And they figured, must be the flu, right? Well, the little girls weren't getting better. Their doctors couldn't figure it out because they hadn't been trained on this yet. And then mom and dad start thinking outside the box, and they're like, well, what has changed in the environment? And then they realized that small cell had gone up right outside their daughter's bedroom. So they moved the little girls to the other side of the home, and little by little, their health started to recover, but that is still way too close. In the scientific literature, there's a death and a neurotoxicity curve that starts coming down at 500 meters, which in our math is 1,640 feet. It starts to come down. It doesn't catch up to the normal population statistics till almost double that. So in this wonderful New Hampshire Commission report, they say a cell tower should never be any closer than a minimum of 1,640 feet. And here they are putting them literally feet from our bedroom windows. So that's where we just have to ask ourselves. We are fighting so many things. Life is hard. But this is one that we can't afford to continue to let build out because there's no cavalry coming. So we need to know what's happening in our homes. We need to learn to mitigate, and we need to learn to reach out to the experts. I think Miriam and Scott have maybe a dozen cases going right now with local communities who have engaged stop5g.org. So we didn't have these resources just a few years ago. So you all sitting here and watching from home, you're the lucky ones. Everything we need is right there, right now, but we cannot do it ourselves. You need to activate yourself, you need to activate your community members and show up. And it's kind of nice. Everybody's got so lost behind their screens these days. It's really nice to pull together as a community, bring your kids into it. You know, there are children's books on this topic. We can teach at any level. But we've got to start now and start with what you have. So Stephanie, we could use some encouragement. Tell us about some wins you've had in New Jersey.
So we are working really hard in New Jersey. We have a town in Jersey Shore, and we've done so much work. And watching these town hall meetings and seeing the hundreds and hundreds of people that show up each and every time that we do this shows that people are plugged in, that they are willing to do the work, they're willing to show up, share their stories, share their concerns, and get the support that we're providing from stop5g.org. I mean, we have people that are there every step of the way, working hand in hand with them to give them what they need, litigation, education, providing all of the resources. So like Cece said, you don't have to do it alone. I think the hardest step is the first one. And oftentimes it can be really scary to stand up and stand out and say the things that are unpopular or that are unknown. But courage is contagious. When one person's willing to go first and willing to speak out and speak what the truth is about what is harming our children, the privacy concerns, the digital concerns, the aesthetic concerns, the fire concerns, I mean, the list just goes on, the environmental concerns. This is our time. This is our moment of truth. I mean, it applies to every single thing that we're doing here at Children's Health Defense. And I think that when we, as a community, really allow ourselves to get immersed in the information that's available and then get out there and share it. Have conversations. Take every opportunity that you can to start planting seeds. Over time, these seeds will develop, and just like any other playbook, when you step outside of the mainstream narrative, there will be judgment, there will be criticism, there will be people that don't believe what you're saying. But that is more of a reason to do it anyway, because when you do it, little by little, we're making those changes. And the proliferation of this technology is moving fast. We need to move faster. We need to be proactive and really get our ground game going in your local communities. Show up at your board meetings, show up at your legislative offices, get in front of any of these permits that are showing up in your communities to express concern before they land in your front yard or your child's park or your child's school. Because once that happens, undoing it, just like when they take away certain freedoms from us, getting it back and getting those towers gone is not going to be an easy thing. So we want to really try as much as we can to be proactive. And there are people out there doing it. You are never alone. We have a giant community right here. So look around, see all the people that are here right now, concerns. Connect with them, exchange numbers, start little meetups, do things that are fun, educational, have potlucks like Cece said, have movie screenings, read books about this topic, create community. Community is where we are stronger, and if you think about these big industries, whichever one you're fighting against, the playbook is the same. We have the roadmap. We know the work that needs to be done. All we have to do is take that first step and get out there, be the leader in your community. Stand up and people will follow. I've seen it, I know it's possible, and I know each one of you have the courage and have what it takes to do the work.
Thank you, Stephanie. Yeah, and when you start these important conversations, know your audience. We're always so heartened when well-known groups take this issue on, like the Environmental Working Group. They have a whole series of fact sheets on this. So if you're talking to a parent who already knows their Clean 15 and Dirty Dozen on the pesticides, say, hey, here's another one that they put out. Have you heard about this? If you're talking to somebody who's a healthcare practitioner, please know we have a full EMF, or electromagnetic fields, medical conference now available online at no cost. You will hear from world-leading scientists, doctors, attorneys, advocates, and we can give them the actual expertise. You could slot in 20 minutes on your calendar here, a half hour there, an hour panel here. It's all there. You will find it on my website at Massachusetts for Safe Technology on the resources page. And I put together a little sheet called EMF Points of Confusion versus Fact. And people have said they print that out and carry it around and give it to people because it has all of these points of mis or disinformation that people have been given. Like, oh, with the inverse square law of physics, if you have distance, you're going to be fine. Well, if there's a sniper up on the rooftop, guess what? They're still going to get you inside your building. These waves travel inside our buildings. So distance is important, but we can't kid ourselves. There is no safe level of man-made radiation in the scientific literature. So use the resources that we have pulled together. If you can, get a radio frequency detection meter. The one that I showed you is from a company called Safe Living Technologies, and that Safe and Sound Pro 2 is what was recommended at the medical conference. Doctors are now taking that into their practice, and we have one in Massachusetts. She loans it to her patients for $10 so they take it seriously and say, you've got 2 hours, go home, do your scavenger hunt, write it down, tell us what you've got, and come back, and we'll work on it. So we have all the training that's needed. Bring us in. I can be brought in to help have these community conversations. We are at the top of our hour. I want to say thank you to Camilla Reese, who was meant to be here today, but she couldn't make the trip. I'm her, second string stand-in. But thank you to Camilla for helping to prepare. She's also working as a consultant on the 704 No More team. She's a powerhouse, and she's going to be coming out with more communication materials for us. I also want to thank Dr. Deborah Davis, who had hoped to be here with us tonight, and she couldn't. And also a special shout out to Aries Tech, who came in and helped to mitigate as much as they could the radio frequencies in this room. So thank you to Aries Tech, who's one of the lead sponsors of the program. And we will be right outside that door is the Children's Health Defense table. We'll be there for a little bit if anybody has questions. So thank you to our panelists. But mostly, thank you to each of you, because we know it's like drinking water out of a fire hose when we learn about this. But again, there is no cavalry coming to protect our kids. It's us. Have a tech safe day, everybody.
This and all CHD TV programming is made possible by generous support from viewers like you. Please consider making a contribution today to keep our programming going strong. Thank you.